Hello and welcome back to the Golden Circle Homestead. I am Amanda and this is my husband Jonathan, and today we're going to be talking to you about solar and what we have done to implement it and be off-grid and kind of get started with that transition away from city living. So let's dive in. Why should someone get solar?
So there's a few reasons why you would get solar. For us, the biggest reason to get in solar is we wanted to be completely independent of like the electrical grid as the city or the county provides it. And around here there's a lot of storms. We live in western Tennessee. There's a lot of storms here and the grid can be pretty inconvenient. And the moment you get, access to the grid, you give people that you don't know access to your property pretty much any time that they want. The moment you have electricity from the power company, you allow them just the ability to come and check your meter, to take care of your equipment and things like that, which is a normal thing, and you would expect that they would come on your property and do those things. But we didn't really want the county or anybody like that just having free access to our land, so we decided to go solar.
So Jonathan, if someone were to buy undeveloped land and they were going to look at bringing electricity to their property, how much money could they save going with solar as opposed to like regular city grid?
So it depends generally. So when you start looking at land, one of the things that you'll see in most sections or most listings for the land is the utilities available. So they'll let you know if you have a well, they'll let you know if you have electricity, or if you don't see that, you can ask the realtor. For us in particular, when we had asked the realtor where electricity was before we were looking at going solar, they told us that it was pretty far down the road. And when it's not available right off the bat, you generally have to call like the county engineer or something like that. When we called, they quoted us to go just over a few miles. They quoted us somewhere around $60,000. When you have electricity brought in from the county or from the city and it's not right there at the road, it's further than, like just one wire's distance, which I don't know the length of that. They require you to get like an easement, so basically you have to get the permission to, and then you have to have a section cleared so that they can drill a giant hole in the ground and they can put a telephone pole in. Our specific case would have required, I think, something like 20 or 25 easements, which meant that, if it was 25 separate pieces of land owned by separate people, we would have to get permission from those people as well as paying for a company to go out there, clear the land, and then the power company would have put in the power poles and then run the line. So it can get pretty pricey when you look at that, as opposed to when we looked at doing solar. I think to date what we've spent on it is under $10,000. I think we're closer to $7,000. We're looking to increase our total capacity from 800 amp hours at 12 volts to 1200 amp hours. But even doing that, we're still under $10,000, and we don't have an electric bill. All we have to do is to save for new batteries. So it can be cheaper, but it's all dependent. If the power's right there at the road and your house is pretty close to the road, and then you're just going to have land behind your house, it can be pretty cheap. But if it's not, if you're a case like ours, then it can be pretty expensive, and going with solar is a much better option.
I've also heard of some situations recently, not in Tennessee, but more so in Michigan, where there are some grants for people who want to add solar to their homes. So not necessarily from a homesteading standpoint, but it does sound like there might be some grant opportunities if you actually hire a company to come in and install solar. I don't know how that might translate to other states, or even how it translates to other situations like homesteading and doing solar yourself, but it might be worth looking into.
Well,
So.
the majority of the grants that I've seen so far offer you, basically they'll pay you back over the course of a certain amount of years if you agree to sell a certain portion of your energy back to the grid. So essentially what they want you to do is put a bunch of solar panels on your house, use what you want of those solar panels, and then any excess energy will get put back into the grid and it'll help to feed your community. For us, that wasn't an option because we chose solar over actually going with a grid-based system. So we didn't have that opportunity to get any grants because the government wasn't interested in us living on our own land and having our own power and doing our own thing.
So, if you are going to DIY it yourself, what are the different components that are a part of the solar system that you would need to get?
The biggest thing that you're going to need is somebody with a base knowledge. It's pretty difficult right off the bat to set up a solar system. There's a lot of components and a lot of things that have to be almost exact in order for a solar system to work. If we're talking just base components and you did have a bit of knowledge doing it, then you would basically need a charger, something to charge the batteries when the sun doesn't shine. If you were going completely off-grid, you would need an inverter. You would need something to turn the battery power, so 12, 24, 36, 48 volts into 120 volts, something that you could use in your house to run your TV, things like that. Then you would need a charge controller, something that brought the energy in from the panels and converted it over to a chargeable energy that could charge the batteries. And then you would need the batteries themselves, whatever brand you might go with. Keep in mind that you get what you pay for 100% of the time. If you go with a low tier battery, you're going to get low tier experience. If you go with a higher end or a middle tier experience, you're going to have a better experience. And then you're going to need panels. Panels are another one. Don't skimp. You'll get odd voltages. We bought some cheap panels right off the bat, and we had one of them light on fire.
We bought a lot of different versions of a lot of different pieces of all of these components and had to return them and get new ones as we were experimenting and learning this for ourselves.
Yeah, I come from a background where, you know, I have a bit of knowledge in the electrical things, and we thought that we could just kind of get like a low tier product, and then we would just deal with the quirks of it and things like that. We first started out, and you know, I'll say this, that the majority of our experience and our knowledge comes from actually trial and error. So we've had 3 separate all-in-one systems. 2 of them died, they didn't work, and then the third one actually ended up working. We got it from a different company. We had 2 different sets of batteries. One of the sets of batteries did not work. They were a cheaper type of battery. And then we had 2 sets of solar panels. One of them, we had a panel that just lit right on fire. In saying that, we would recommend a company like Signature Solar. We can leave a link down below. That's where we got our all-in-one system. They sell solar panels there, and they sell certain types of batteries. The rig that we have, or the area that we have, didn't necessarily fit those batteries, but we did get our all-in-one system there. And then there's plenty of reviews and things like that on YouTube that you can look into when it comes to looking into the different types of batteries and the different types of panels as well.
So this is basically the brain of the entire thing. This is the all-in-one unit, so that means that it contains a charge controller, an inverter, and a charger. So this thing can take the solar energy, the electricity that comes off the panels, it can take it in via this wire right here, and it can turn it into actual usable electricity, which it'll feed back into these batteries right here. We've got 8 of them. Or it'll kick it back into the house, which we have attached right here. These ones on the end. It also takes the place of a charge controller. So we have another wire right here, and this wire goes out and plugs into the generator. And that wire's purpose is for when we don't get enough sun during the day, we can basically just kick on the generator, It will feed power into this. This will take that power and transfer it over here into these batteries right here. Right here we have 8. They were ampere time, but now they're Li time. They changed the name of the business. These are 8 100 amp hour LiFePO 4 batteries. So they're lithium ion or lithium iron phosphate. We've got them basically hooked up, positive and negative right here, with large battery cables. This is what the manufacturer recommended for the box as well as the batteries. They go to a bus bar right here, a 250 amp bus bar, which basically just has lugs on it and connects each one. You can see it a little bit better right here. And then they go dispersed in between each battery. If you look down here at the actual batteries, they're a little dusty because nobody comes near this closet. Each battery set 1, 2, 3, 4 is connected into a 48 volts like series, and then they're paralleled with these wires right here. So it's a 48 volt series parallel system. In total at 12, we've got 8 batteries in here at 48 volts. So we're looking at 200 amp hours at 48 volts, which I would say is the absolute minimum that you need if you're going to live off grid and live within a reasonable amount of time. We were living on 400 amp hours, but Amanda can tell you it was pretty frustrating. We were going through gas like crazy. We were running the generator like nuts, which is not why we came out here. We didn't come out here to live on fossil fuels. We came out here to live off the sun. It's bad enough that we have to buy these things, but so we'll move over to the solar panels, and I'll show you guys the solar panels next. So these are our solar panels. We went with the Renogy clone. It's an HQST, high quality solar technology, I think is the name. We have 15 panels. These are just temporary holders for the panels right now. Both the angle and the quality of the actual supports are not what I want them to be, but they're way better than they were before. They were just leaning up against things. We have 3 panels. Basically all I did was I came in through just temporary wire for now, which doesn't matter because it's not high voltage wire. It's not going to kill you. I come in on the one panel, I go through each one, daisy chain together, go off to the next set of panels, daisy chain, off to the next set of panels, daisy chain, and then they go right back through the unit. With 15 panels, getting about, I think the highest I've seen is 86% efficiency. I mean, we're getting roughly 1300 to 1400 watts on a normal day. It's enough to make a loaf of bread, to run the toaster. As long as you have good sunlight, you'll be plenty. Just these 15 panels alone can charge our batteries in probably 2 hours. We're fully charged. So this is the generator that we use. When you're using an all-in-one system like that, you have to have a consistent type of electricity. You can't just have a normal battery. The unit was made to take AC electricity from like the power company, something that never changes. If you have a normal generator, what happens is when you increase the load, like all generators, it'll bog down. Boom. When it bogs down, it reflects when you see the voltage and the hertz. So we had to purchase what's called an inverter generator. Basically an inverter generator, it's all complicated in here, but it's a normal generator. It goes AC to DC voltage, then from DC voltage back to AC voltage, and it will regulate itself like a vehicle does. It has an idle. It consumes a lot less gas, but also it gives you a very consistent voltage. If you don't have consistent voltage, you'll either break your all-in-one box, or you will, it just won't charge. It won't allow it to charge at all. If you have a normal generator, you can use it on an all-in-one system, but you're only allowed to go 50% capacity. So if you had a generator that could produce 4,800 watts, you're only allowed to use roughly 2,400 watts, no more than 2,400 watts to charge that system.
If someone is hearing you speak in this video and they want to know exactly what to get based on our experience and the success we've had, what brands, what products would you recommend for each of the components?
So I guess we'll start at the all-in-one system. So if you're new to solar, my suggestion is to get an all-in-one system. All-in-one systems basically mean that your charger, your charge controller, and your inverter are all in one. You only have one unit. It takes care of all the computation. It takes care of everything. Otherwise, you would have separate units and you would have to wire them together and things like that. Personally, I don't have experience with that, but having used an all-in-one system, I would definitely recommend that you would use an all-in-one system. There are some highly rated brands. Our personal experience, we dealt with basically a Chinese-based one that was fairly rated, but didn't work out for us, and I can't remember the name exactly, but we weren't happy with it. The second one that we dealt with that died was SunGold Power. Very highly rated. I wouldn't really say anything negative against them. I just don't think that it was for us. I didn't really have a great extensive knowledge on solar, and they were the ones that didn't really have good customer service. It was all Chinese based. So I wouldn't suggest going with them if you're a very new person to solar. The third one that we went with was suggested highly on YouTube, and it was suggested highly on a lot of solar forums, and that is the EG4 system from Signature Solar. So basically, Signature Solar has the unit made for them, and then they sell it, and then they take care of all customer support. You don't have to contact a company that manufactured it. You can contact them. So for the main system, or the brains of the system, the all-in-one, we use the EG4 6500 watt system. For our batteries, we went with basically the mid-tier batteries that were suggested on a lot of the different forums and online as well, and that is it was Ampere Time, now it's the LI Time. We went with...
Is that the same brand under a different name?
It's the same brand. It was Ampere Time. Now they changed their name to LI Time. I don't know why they did that. It's the same product, everything like that. They're a very innovative company. Their help or their customer service is very good. You just type in and they'll either email you or text you, and you can go back and forth with them over email or text or even through their website, and they'll give you assistance. Their batteries have like a 5-year warranty on them. A lot of people say that you can get somewhere around 7 years out of them, which is good. Good enough for us right off the bat. For the panels, what we went with was HQST, high quality solar technology. HQST, I've seen reviews of them in the past. I've seen a lot of people compare them to like a Renogy panel, which is a very well-known company. And they basically use the same controllers, they use the same type of wire, the same wire. They use the same connectors, and they use the same panels with the same like monocrystal display. So we decided to go with them. I think it was like $30 less a panel, which, I mean, when you're buying 15 panels all at once, that adds up real quick. You know, and in our case, it allowed us to get a significant amount, like 5 more panels for the same price. When it comes to the wire and things like that, just make sure that you're oversizing your wire. A lot of people want to just use a little skimpy wire. Just keep in mind that, you know, especially like, so we have our home here, and then we basically plowed a field, or we cleared out a field so that there's no trees around it or anything. We set our solar directly in the center of that field. If you're gonna take and do something like that and bury the wires underground, don't undersize it. Don't go with like a size 14 wire when you should go with something like a size 10, because you never know when you might have a couple more kids and need some more energy, or you might swap your house out or something like that, or increase your needs when it comes to solar, and now you have a decrease or a lower wire as opposed to a higher gauge wire, which you should definitely need in a situation like that. So my advice is to go with like a bigger wire. For our solar, we try to use like a 10 gauge wire at least. It allows us a very low resistance when it comes to that, because I mean, in all reality, most solar systems from your panels, you're pulling like 500 watts or 500 volts a lot of times, somewhere around there, or, you know, definitely over 150, somewhere around 200 sometimes if you run them like me. And having a nice big wire like that just definitely helps. It helps with loss of energy and heat, things like that. I think that's all the components.
So you kind of went over at the beginning that we spent about $10K on our whole solar setup. How would you break down each component per cost?
So the breakdown of the components in like a rough ability would be for your all-in-one system, you're going to spend anywhere from $1,200 to $1,400 on a system like ours. Obviously, you know, it's dependent on size. A big point of advice is go with something.
Speaking of,
Yeah. That means that the sun is now done. I think so. Generally, the all-in-one systems, they'll warn you when the sunlight's gone. That way, if a dog or something trips over the wire, it'll set the alarm off. It'll beep like that and let you know that there's no more sunlight, or it's not drawing any more power in from the sunlight. I think that the sun is just about set, so I think we're done with sun.
and this last setup that we got has this nice wall component that we can look at, and like kind of like a thermostat on the wall where we can
adjust everything. We can see what the voltage is at. We can see what we're bringing in for wattage. If it gets low on voltage, which just means that the batteries are dying late at night, it'll actually start sounding an alarm or start beeping. Amanda will wake me up, and it means it's time to run outside and to fire up the generator and run it for maybe an hour to kind of charge things back up to get us through the night, which rarely happens, but once we increase the batteries, it shouldn't happen anymore. But back to the question. The all-in-one system, you're looking to spend anywhere from $1,000 to $1,500. I would say more realistically $1,200 to $1,400. You're probably not going to find one for $1,000 that can actually power a whole home. That's a big thing, is just basically just hook it right up into your home. Don't worry about, a lot of people like to hang extension cords and things like that. Go with an all-in-one system where you can put actual big wires in there, like a 2-pole 50 or something like that. You can do a 2-pole 50 amp system and plug it into your home. Definitely oversize that by a lot so that you can actually live on it. The batteries, so we bought, I think, 4 of our ampere time batteries. So it's 4 12-volt 100 amp hour batteries. At first cost us $1,350, and then as the economy has sort of taken a dip, they've gone up to, I think, $1,500 for 4 of them. Right now we have 8 batteries, and we run them in series so that they're in a 48-volt system. When you're pricing out that, keep in mind that not only do you need the batteries, which come with nice lugs and things like that, but you will need wire, large wire, which is expensive, and then you will need the actually battery cable ends. Those things are expensive. The best bet, or your best bet for getting them, is not to go to the automotive store or anything like that. I think our local automotive store quoted us like $8 a foot, whereas online I think we spent $50 and we got 10 feet. So definitely go on like Amazon or something like that, or even just eBay, and get yourself some nice battery cable that's really flexible. But I would say in wire altogether, count about $150 to $200, because you're going to need quite a bit of large wire, as well as add another $100 to $150 in for the actual cable that you're going to need, like Romex, to run the power down out of the box and over into the electrical panel for your house. A lot of people price out just the components, and then they go to set the system up and they realize, oh, I don't have the battery cable, oh, I don't have the cable ends, oh, I don't have the Romex that I need, oh, I don't have the breaker that I need. They don't take into consideration the entirety of the project, which in some instances it's not a big deal, if you need 5-10 feet of Romex, but in this instance, I mean, you're talking about like a 4-gauge wire, which is pretty big wire, and for us was like $200 for a roll of that stuff. So keep in mind that those costs they'll vary depending on how far you have to go, but a safe bet is anywhere from $150 to $200 for both, for the battery cables and the ends, and then for the Romex as well. After we've gone from the all-in-one system to the batteries, we're going to run a cable out to our panels, our solar panels outside. My advice for the solar panels: get a nice thick extension cord, something that's like a 12 gauge or a 10 gauge extension cord. Cut the end off it and use the hot and the neutral, the black and the white, to be your positive and your negative for your solar panel, and you can bury that thing under just a little bit of dirt, or if you want to just leave it exposed on the ground, extension cords are great for that. They're usually UV resistant, they're made to be out in the elements and things like that, and they're waterproof, and it keeps all of your wires all contained into one sleeve instead of being, you know, a piece of Romex that's not necessarily made for it, or a piece of UF cable, which, I mean, that stuff's a nightmare. You're going to trip over it constantly. So add into that, you know, that your solar panels are going to be a bit away from your house where they actually get full sun throughout the day. So you have wire throughout that. I would say probably 50, 60 bucks for a good amount of wire to go from the all-in-one system at the house out to the panels itself. And then for your panels, I would say we spend about $1,500 on our panels. Keep in mind that these prices are based on us going 150 feet away from our house. So that's where the cost for our cable went to go out to the solar panels. We have 15 panels instead of, you know, whatever anybody else wants, but this is for our needs, a family of 4 living in an actual home. Then we have 8 batteries, which is not even enough for us. We actually need 12 batteries, honestly. And then we have a 6,500 watt system. Everything is going to vary greatly depending on what you need. For the average family, so if it was just me and my wife and we didn't have the kids, we would still need at least an 800 amp hour system with at least a 6,000 watt system powering the home. I wouldn't go any less than that. My own father is asking me to build one for his RV, and he wants a solar system on it, and I suggested the same thing. 10 panels, 800 amp hours with a 6,000 watt system. So the prices will vary as time goes on. If we continue down into a bit of a recession, the prices are going to go up significantly. But the benefit is you don't have to pay an electric bill. You save quite a bit on the electric bill. You have to save for the batteries because they die roughly every 7 years, something like that. But the price for us was significantly less than we were paying back in Michigan for electricity. So.
So out of this entire experience, what are the top lessons you've learned that you can share with everybody else?
So the top lessons I've learned, the biggest thing is to not skimp. You get what you pay for. At first we went, like I said, with the low tier products, and we got a very low tier experience. We were struggling for quite a while. I mean, we were living off a generator because I had made the mistake of thinking that we could get by on something less, and then, you know, later in the future we could just amp it up a little bit more. The second thing is just being cognizant of, you know, they write these things down on paper and they tell you to do things a certain way. Sometimes you don't always have to do things like that, but with solar you really do. If they tell you to use a certain gauge wire, use that certain gauge wire. Don't use anything different because it will skew what you actually get. The type of batteries that you have could be damaged. Your voltages are going to be up and down. Your wattage is going to be up and down. You really do need to listen to what they say. I know it seems frustrating. I know it costs a lot more money, but we tried, trust us, we tried doing it the halfway, and it didn't work. It just didn't work at all. We had voltages all over the place. We were struggling quite a bit because we thought we could get away with doing it a lesser way, doing it halfway.
Do you want to share anything about the generators?
The generators as well. You know, we had talked there. I think she'll add it also into the video where we talk about the generators. I mean, we had a little yellow generator. It was a 4,800 watt, I think it'll do, or 3,650 watt. And we had one controller that would allow us to charge, and then we had a second controller that wouldn't. It was kind of intermittently charging. You know, to go with what we had said earlier, you know, one of my biggest bits of advice is when you're buying your products too, you know, to go back to what I was saying, not out of a sense of like a nationalism or believing that Americans make things better or anything like that, but if you live in America and you speak English and you've always lived in America, it's very important that you go with a company who makes products or has customer service that is based here in the United States. I don't say that because I'm biased in any way like that, or because I don't care for products that are made overseas or anything like that. The reason purely that I say that is because when you build a solar system, you have very complex questions. And those complex questions, when you're trying to ask them to a person who doesn't speak fluent English or who speaks a very broken English, it's very difficult for them to understand exactly what you're saying. And then even when they might understand exactly what you're saying and have an answer for you, when they translate that answer back to you in English, it does not come out the same way. The very first controller that we had, we couldn't get customer service for at all. It was a Chinese-based company. It was a highly rated controller, but they had no customer service at all. The second controller that we had, they boasted good customer service, but their customer service was based in China, and although they spoke English and they were very kind, they spoke a very broken English. Oftentimes I would message the person that was responsible for helping me set up my system, and they would either have no clue what I was talking about, or they just would answer in a broken way. It was English that I just couldn't understand, didn't answer the question that I had. The third company that we went with, Signature Solar, we bought our controller from them instead of getting it from eBay or Amazon where it might have been cheaper. We bought it straight from them. Texas-based customer service. They're open from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Their time, and you're literally talking to somebody who speaks the same English as you. You call them, hey, how can I help you? You're speaking to a person who can answer very complex questions and make sure that you understand exactly what needs to happen, and help you to set up your system, answer all the questions that you have. On top of that, Signature Solar has helped me because I've had questions that have gone unanswered. I can't Google them, they're very complex. And Signature Solar, their customer service, has been able to assist me in that as well. So that would be a big thing that I would say, just focus on getting somebody who has American-based or in the States-based English-speaking customer service. That's a huge, huge thing.
Because even if you have an electrical background like you, it's still a totally different thing. Like, it's a unique beast. Yep. And so if you're coming into it with, again, even if you have an electrical background, but a lot of people don't, and they're coming into homesteading thinking that they can learn as they go, which is a great mentality to have. There's just not a whole lot of educational resources out there online for solar, and so having a company that you can kind of lean into for customer support is super helpful. Yeah,
and you need somebody. You're literally taking energy from the sun that's millions and millions of miles away, and you're turning it into power that powers your TV and things like that. It's a very complex system, and I thought I could handle it, but I couldn't. I just had way too many questions, far too many questions, and I needed somebody. And being out here alone, we needed somebody that we could call, somebody that we could deal with, in person or over the phone.
And that's all the information we have for you based on our experience. But if you're watching this video, this is probably something you're interested in, and if this is something that you do end up deciding to embark on and you have questions, while we are no experts, feel free to drop a comment below and we can do our best to try to help you and help answer any questions you might have. But like Jonathan had mentioned, getting a solar system that has a really good customer service is pretty imperative if you're coming into this new. But yeah, so if you like this video and want to follow our family along on our adventures with homesteading, hit the subscribe button and join us. And we'll see you in the next video.
Yep, and all the links for everything will be down just below.
Bye.
Bye.